You're looking live at Iowa Speedway, and as we get ready for the Iowa Corn 300 in the Elite Racing League Mega Driver 86 Indycar Series round number 9, around what they call the Bull Ring in Newton, Iowa. I'm Tony Donahue. Rish Kosla is with me as well. Rish, I love Iowa. I've been there many times. It's always a great race, but you have to have your car handling right throughout an entire stint where there's a lot of drop-off. So we may see some crazy action coming up tonight here on the Elite Racing League.
We absolutely will. It's going to be tricky for these drivers to get to grips with their cars over the course of the night, and it's probably going to be, obviously, sim racing. You're not, kind of feeling the G-force of the car, but this could be one of the more physical nights for these drivers, at least in terms of just the way they're having to steer these cars and drive them, because you really don't get a chance to breathe both mentally and physically, because you're always turning here at Iowa. You're always turning, or you've got maybe half a second between turns 2 and turns 3 to prepare for that. So it's going to be all out for these guys for 300 laps tonight. It's going to be a tough one, and again, another test of endurance here in this Mega Driver 86 series.
Yeah, and as we come off a very crazy month of May, Iowa is a fun track. Let's break down this starting field here, if you don't mind, Rich. We've got Adriano Pinheiro on the pole. Chad Frankenfield starts second. Right off the bat, two guys that we talk a lot about throughout the season, putting it on the front row here tonight.
Yeah, absolutely, and Pinheiro right now is kind of in that championship hunt right now, sits 42 points behind our championship leader, Alexander Van de Sant. Chad Frankenfield's going to need a big night tonight to close that gap up to be within a shout next week, or excuse me, for the finale, because Chad Frankenfield right now sits 108 points behind the leader, Alexander Van de Sant, so he's going to need a big night tonight. But yeah, two championship contenders potentially there on that front row, and it's actually some ways back before we get to the next two guys who are fighting for that championship a little bit further back down the order. In fact, we'll roll through the rest of the grid, and you'll probably see them there. Alexander Van de Sant and Victor Del Porto starting right in front of one another, 17th and 19th there. Small grid tonight, but still a little bit of work that those guys are going to have to do from the starting point.
And I go back to Iowa a few years ago, not the race that IndyCar ran till about 1 a.m. because of rain. But if you remember correctly, a couple years ago, there was 5 or 6 cars on a lead lap because it was long green flag runs, and the last 3 cars put tires on. So there is so many differing strategies. This track, Rich, almost drives as a road course, right? Because you're basically turning the entire way. Even the front straightaway has a kink to it. It drives like a road course, and you've got to play some strategy and kind of back in those last 100 or so laps, knowing that there's going to be a lot of different strategies, because it's just constantly, if this thing stays green, you're ticking off lap after lap real quick.
Yeah, you really are, and that's what we're hoping for here is that things do stay green. But of course, on the restart here, it's going to be tough to get going. We'll see as the pace car is going to peel off relatively shortly, but getting power down is going to be tough as well.
Down to the green flag we come. It's Adriano Pinheiro leads him. Chad Frankenfield, AJ Musselman, and Mark Murphy. A nice jump there by Mark Murphy. He grabs the third position, and Adriano Pinheiro shakes it out down the back straightaway. He leads some dicing back there for about 4th or 5th into turn 3 here into turn 4. A little bit of a battle for the lead as Chad Frankenfield continues to stalk Adriano Pinheiro one lap through. But right there, Rich, we're going to see this all night. 2 lanes is what we're looking at already. And if that top lane stays gripped up, and we know it will, and that bottom lane can start working, we'll see a lot of racing action throughout the field.
Absolutely. You can see right here Mark Murphy working that little bit of a higher lane on AJ Musselman as that battle for the lead. The gap kind of opens up a little bit. This is a great battle we've got going on for 3rd, though. And yeah, you saw that just behind there. Craig Forsyth a little bit on that higher line. Guys just trying different things out. And again, in a 300-lap race like this, it's all about just getting settled with your car, getting these long runs in, especially focusing on the long run pace of your car, because if you can save your tires early in this stint, save some fuel as well, you can stretch that out a little bit longer, and it can be a huge advantage for you later on. I recall, I don't know if it was the 300 or it was the 200s that we ran in the doubleheader that we ran in 2020, but you can potentially there are multiple strategies here in terms of running on fuel and on tires, so that's something that guys could be looking at here if that is open in terms of
and a lot of times the fuel, you need fuel before you need tires at Iowa. Let's go through the field real quick. Alex Van de Sant up to 11th. He's up 6 spots to start this race. Victor Del Porto now up 3. Thiago Benedetti fell back 6 positions I don't know if there's any contact there between him and the 47 car, but they lost 6 and 5 positions respectively. But Adriano Pinheiro continues to lead Chad Frankenfield. Rish, let's talk about Chad. He's qualified. He reminds me of Felix Rosenquist. He qualifies well, but can never finish the day to get a win. Love you, Chad. Very Felix Rosenquist. What does he have to do tonight to break through and get a victory?
Yeah, it's ironically it's the same story for him in Cup, and we talk about this in the Cup Series on Wednesday nights as well with Frankenfield. Ridiculously quick, that 15 car, able to extract the maximum performance out of a car, but to sustain that over the course of a long distance of a race has been tough for Chad Frankenfield. And the biggest thing this year that's been getting him off is he's just been a little bit mistake prone. And it's little things. It isn't, he's going out and throwing that car in the wall every week, but it's, maybe it's just maybe a speeding penalty on pit road. We've seen that a couple of times. Maybe it's just a slight brush on the wall that's going to tighten your car up and kind of mess up the handling for the rest of the night. It's not going to take you out, but it's going to take away your opportunity to win a race. And it's just been little things that have been getting in the way of Chad Frankenfield's success. So for him, really the focus is absolutely going to be on don't gun it here at the start, accept second place right now, maybe to Adriano Pinheiro if that's the pace of your car, and work on your car. Make sure it's still running when you get to lap 280, lap 290, and then if you're still in this position, keep yourself inside the top 4, top 5, keep yourself in touch with that leader, and then you can start attacking, start taking a bit more of that risks. He's got the pace to win a race. It's just about making sure he has the car with him by the end of the race.
Rish, you mentioned that. I mean, we are at dusk right now. This will be a completely dark track. It'll probably cool down a little bit. Over these 300 laps, how much are these cars changing throughout the night?
I'd imagine quite a bit. I mean, they are starting a little bit darker here. If we go up to kind of that blimp view, you can't quite see because it's a lit track. The sun's already gone down. So you're not going to get quite that same transition from, maybe before sunset to after in terms of nighttime. That kind of happened just at the end of practice session. We do have a bit of a battle going on for the lead here. Frankenfield's been making some forward momentum. So less of a concern there, but we still will see air temperature, track temperature going down. The cars will theoretically grip up a little bit more, speed up a little bit more, so you need to be on top of that as well. But in theory, should see a relatively good handling car as we get later into the race. It should be these early stages that might be the worst handling cars that these guys have to deal with.
And, if this stays green, we're already 15 laps into this thing, and the last car out there is 14 seconds behind, and we're running 17-second laps. So, Rich, we're going to see, if this stays green, a lot of traffic and a lot of these leaders trying to maneuver some of those back markers.
Absolutely, yeah. We can even pull it up here and take a look at the track map. Actually, it's just blocked off a little bit there by our total timing and score, and we'll see if we can grab that there. But there you can see what that looks like. Our leaders right now have about turns 1 and 2, the gap before they get to that last place car. Yard Whittaker starting in 21st. This race is a relatively small field, but yeah, it's going to be a bit chaotic here as we get these long green flag runs, and we'll keep an eye on that as it continues to play out.
And again, a fun track here at Iowa, and Chad Frankenfield, like you said, maybe just content with running second. And honestly, if I'm second right now, knowing that we're probably 7 to 10 laps away from getting into this mess of traffic is kind of what we're looking at when you catch the back of the field, I almost prefer to be the second driver getting through, because that first driver is going to be the one who's going to have to pick and choose where he puts his car to pass the leaders or to pass the back of the field. And you'd hope those back markers that are getting ready to go a lap down, they still want to battle, because it's so tough here, Rich, to get your lap back. You still want to battle, but you want to be respectful here early on to the leaders, as we are 20 laps into this bad boy already. Adriano Pinheiro leading Chad Frankenfield. Mark Murphy is third. AJ Musselman is fourth. Nicholas Sudik is fifth. Greg Forsyth sixth. Justin Fortner seventh. Alex Van de Sant on the charge here as he moves up to the 8th position. He has now gained 9 spots. He is battling in that number 97 as we watch this battle go down for the 8th and 7th spots.
Yeah, for sure. Van de Sant right now, the biggest mover, might just have had a mistake on his qualifying lap that got him mired towards the back of the pack. But yeah, certainly moving forward. Meanwhile, Victor Del Porto back to his starting spot in 19th. He moved up on the initial start, but doesn't seem to quite have the pace in that 27 car right now, but also remember Del Porto, famous for his long run speed and his ability to stretch out tires, stretch out fuel. So definitely do not discount this driver at all at these early stages in the race. Victor Del Porto, there's a reason he's second in the championship right now, and he's going to continue chasing down Van de Sant, now up to 18th position. Has a little bit of a gap before he gets to Marshall Stanley, but again, long way to go in this race.
And I know you mentioned this at the outset. If you have it in front of you, great. If not, I'll give you some time, Rish. But if you want to look through the points here, too, and give some guys that are battling for that overall season championship, whenever you have that ready, I'd like to give that out to the viewers listening and watching, because we're coming down to the nitty-gritty here, and we're getting down towards the end of the season.
Absolutely. So this is the guy who has really been the it factor all season long. Alex Van de Sant was so close to winning the 500 just a few weeks ago. Still, though, has 3 wins on the season, was the winner last time out at the Indianapolis Road Course. 308 points leading the way, and he's got a 41-point gap to that driver we were just talking about, Victor Del Porto, now up into the 17th position, finding pace in that car once again. And in fact, it looks like he was backing off a little bit in the early stages of the run, because right now he's faster than about the next 10 cars in front of him on the racetrack, as we do have a yellow on the track. We'll continue and pick this up a little bit later as we take a look at what brought out this first yellow of the night.
Well, I think if you're some of those back markers getting ready to go a lap down, you breathe a little bit of a sigh of relief. With the Whiskey Cask replay here on the Elite Racing Network will show us what exactly brought this yellow flag out. And this is Benedetti, who had a bad start. And I
hit that wall outside of 4.
Yeah, brushed
it was.
Yep.
And spins it around there on the bottom.
Here. Great job by everybody to get through here, bringing out the first yellow flag of the evening. So everybody take a deep breath. 26 green flag laps there, Rish. I'm more than likely going to stay out, but we may see some of those guys in the middle of the pack go off a little bit of a different strategy here and maybe come in and get tires and fuel.
Yeah, for sure. That's something you want to keep an eye out for. We'll take a look. We're just on the Whiskey Cast replay here because it looked like someone had a very close miss here with Tiago Benedetti, and we're just trying to spot who exactly that was. It might have actually been the 15 car of Chad Frankenfield. Very close there. We're going to ride on board with him just after seeing this wreck. And if you're the second place driver, this is a little bit scary to see here on board with 15. And there's that car. Makes the call to go up the racetrack. A little bit sketchy there, but Frankenfield makes it work and does stay, of course, out of that wall. Meanwhile, here we go. Just about everybody actually coming down pit road. So tire degradation could be very real for these guys. And 22 given that tally, but here we go. Pretty much everybody except for Eric Macedo on pit road. And yeah, I think that right there just tells us what tire deg is going to look like throughout this night.
Yeah, and I agree with the call. I mean, whenever you got a chance here to have a pit stop under the yellow conditions as fast as they click off laps around Iowa, you're certainly going to take advantage of that opportunity. Also, one of the things, C2 Freight Services. C2 Freight offers complete freight management services. They are ready to meet your needs today as well as your changing needs in the future. With thousands of qualified carriers in their database, they're capable of handling shipping for every type of goods, perishable foods to office equipment. Whatever you need to ship, they have access to the necessary equipment, including flatbeds, double drops, fans, tankers, refrigerated equipment, multi-axle heavy haulers, dump trucks, auto carriers, and more. C2 Freight Services. Rish, breakdown coming off pit road there, the top 5.
Yeah, absolutely. So actually, in front of everybody who did come down pit road, Eric Macedo here staying out on the racetrack. Going to be interesting to see how this call works out for him. Maybe not even making that call, just trying to get that lap lead point potentially, because it looks like that 83 now is going to hit pit road. So that should cycle then Adriano Pinheiro to the lead of this race. And Macedo does, in fact, reach that commitment line, so he'll have to go down pit road. So there you go. Adriano Pinheiro then is going to be the leader, as he has been all race long. Then Chad Frankenfield following him right off. Mark Murphy as well, staying in that 3rd position. Nicholas Sudik might have actually lost a position there, not too sure, but Van de Sant now up into 5th position off the pit road ahead of AJ Musselman, and actually Sudik up a position, my bad. It was AJ Musselman who dropped 2 spots then behind Alexander Van de Sande, now restarting in the 6th position. So a little bit of shuffling, but for the most part, guys, where they expect it to be. The biggest change, of course, Alexander Van de Sande now restarting inside the top 5, and that's going to be huge for this 97 car, because all of a sudden, all those gaps, he was about 5 or so seconds behind the leader when the caution came out, maybe a little bit more. Now all of a sudden, he's going to start right behind these leaders, just a couple of car lengths back, and has a big opportunity. That car has looked supremely fast. In fact, the only 2 cars faster than him so far this race have been Pinheiro and Frankenfield, and Van de Sande's been working through traffic the entire race.
Yeah, so this is going to get real interesting here on this restart that we have coming up here from the Iowa Speedway, the Iowa Corn 300 on the Elite Racing Network, the Mega Driver 86 IndyCar Series. 10% of the race in the books. We've had our first yellow flag here. We'll get a wave around lap and then back to green. And you have to think here, Rish, Chad Frankenfield, who had an opportunity to maybe make a pass for the lead, will now see what his car can do during a restart, and we'll see him probably battle it out for the lead. And like you said, Van de Sande up 12 spots to the 5th position. It's been a great start of the evening for that 97 car.
It really has, yeah. Up 12 positions, our absolute biggest mover of the race. In fact, I think the next biggest mover is up 3 positions. So just gives to show kind of the how quick that car has been in race trim. And again, to me, it seems like it must just have been a mistake in qualifying that resulted in his starting grid. But now again, that's all reset. It's effectively another start of this race here. You've completed 30 laps, but these guys are going to get back underway in just 1 lap time. 1 lap here for pacing while the pace car's off the racetrack. Allow the leader to set the speed. Guys will get going, and yeah, again, Van de Sande's going to be the car to look out for, but definitely watch Mark Murphy, Nicholas Sudik. They've also learned from that last restart. They dropped a little bit compared to Pinheiro and Frankenfield in terms of overall lap time, but could they have a long-run car, over the course of, if we do get a long run, can they maybe keep up on this particular restart, change up a little bit of how they want to play out this stint? Don't count those guys out either, but right now, yeah, Frankenfield pounded Pinheiro. He wants to go for that lead. The rest of these guys willing to kind of hang back here and take it easy on this restart.
Green flag back out, lap number 33 of 300. It's Adriano Pinheiro with the lead. Chad Frankenfield 2nd, Mark Murphy 3rd, Nicholas Sudik 4th, and Van de Sande in the 5th position. Single file from about 1st all the way back to 10th as they head down the back straightaway.
Absolutely here, and you've got Craig Forsyth defending from Justin Fortner, who's looking to the inside line right now. No moves made quite yet. Again, kind of the point of the single file restart, at least get guys settled into the run before we start seeing moves. And in fact, we almost saw one right there. Fortner, again, trying that bottom line there while Forsyth seems to be pretty happy on top of the racetrack. But not enough room there, not enough speed, at least right now, for Fortner. Meanwhile, the 2 of them catching AJ Musselman right now for 6th place. No real update on the battle for the lead. Right now, still relatively spread out up front. Closest battle we've got here on the racetrack right now between Musselman, Forsyth, and Fortner, putting on a great showing. Basically showing almost 3 lanes there through turns 3 and 4, maybe 2.5, but still we're seeing these guys able to put their cars at different places on the racetrack, and that's going to be important for the way the racing plays out too.
Yeah, and kudos on this restart. Everybody gave everybody some room. We did almost see some 3 wide there, but drivers picking their lanes and sticking to them, because we know here, especially late, it seems like cautions breed caution. So a very clean restart there as the leader continues, as Adriano Pinheiro has the lead by about 1.5 seconds. It looks like Chad Frankenfield currently 2nd, Mark Murphy 3rd. Victor Del Porto is up a few spots. He's up to 15th, but nothing like what Alex Van de Sande has done, up 12 spots in the top 5. Rish, to me, I think the upper groove, the upstairs line, is the preferred line later in the run, but we see a lot of these guys working that low line, especially in 3 and 4.
Yeah, low line, I think, guys, just, again, you want to take the shorter way around the racetrack, maybe when you've got the rubber and you've got the grip to do so, but as that grip starts to go away, that kind of wider line, it's longer, but it's a lot less strain on the tires. It makes a little bit more sense, and you see some guys starting the run with that high line, and that could potentially be, again, just a little bit of a, foresight into that kind of, into that long run mentality. You say, hey, I'm going to sacrifice my short run speed here by running this higher line, but it's going to scrub the tires a lot less. It should be easier on them, and I should have pace a little bit later in the run. We'll see, of course, if that does actually play out that way, but here we go. We've got maybe a battle going on for 3rd. Nicholas Sudik starting to close the gap in on Mark Mark Murphy. Van de Sant right now just hanging back a little bit as, again, no major update on the guys up front, though I will say Pinheiro and Frankenfield have both gapped this group by a second already over Mark Murphy, so it's been pretty impressive, the pace of those two leaders.
Yeah, and we saw in that first stint, even though we went to the yellow flag at lap 26, they were over a half a lap from lapping the back of the field. So we're about 10 laps into this green flag run. We'll see if the tire when the tires do indeed start dropping off as we watch this battle for third between Murphy, Sudik, and Van de Sant. And again, you know, we talked about Mr. Consistent. Van de Sant's going to be right there. I think he knows what he has here 42 laps into this thing. No need to battle too much here because he knows he's going to have something for these guys at the end. Let's go back to the battle for 13th here as Del Porto continues to make his way up to the field.
Yeah, for sure. Del Porto trying to work his way forward, and it looks like he's trying to make that inside lane work right there, using that, again, that maybe a little bit quicker right now, but we'll see what it does for the tires in the long run, type line. And interesting that he's low in 1 and 2 and then takes that high line in 3 and 4. Could also just be reactionary to what the guy in front is doing, because you don't want to get too much dirty air there on the front nose of these cars. He gets a little bit too low, maybe a little bit too close to that apron, at least for my comfort, but he seems to get away with it just fine there for Del Porto, and continues to work here on Joe Ribeiro in front of him. Also, these guys both chasing down Alec Balvans in front, so this could become a 3-car race here for the 12th position very soon, and very much has.
So up front, it's still Pinheiro over Frankenfield, Murphy, Sudik, and Van de Sant. Your top 5 as we continue to watch this battle for 12th, and they are getting racy here, Rish, into turn number 1.
They absolutely are, and we're actually going to jump real quick to the Whiskey Cast replay as there's some damage there to the car of Justin Fortner. He was battling inside that top 10 just briefly. We're going to take a quick look. That was the aftermath of the incident. Sounds like it was netcode on the ground, and this is the Justin Fortner car, the 12 car. Take a look at what happened here. You see that moving to the inside, and there just netcode is the cause of it. No actual contact between those cars. Unfortunately, Justin Fortner's night comes to an early end. No caution called for that, though.
Yeah, and then, that's the start of it. Then the aftermath coming down smacks into the wall, too. So a terrible break there as we have reached lap number 50 here of 300 in the Iowa Corn 300, the Mega Driver 86 IndyCar Series. And all of a sudden, again, still looking racy. Alex Van de Sant looking to break into that 4th spot.
Absolutely. Here, Van de Sant chasing down Nicholas Sudik, and he's right there on the tail of that car. Super close between these two drivers, and it's been a little bit of accordion between them. Van de Sant's gotten close before and then has kind of dropped back. We'll see now if he's able to stay up close. Van de Sant right now, this is the first time I think he's really starting to hit these guys that are that higher echelon of speed, and of course that slows down his progress as he gets further up the order. But yeah, within 0.2 of a second of Sudik, also take into account some of that aero wash on the car, but Sudik doing a fantastic job right now defending against the hard charge from Van de Sant. We'll see how long he can hold him off.
And again, you're also learning here, Rish, what you can do with your car. You know, you're now 20 laps into this stint. What can you do with your car? Can you run it high? Can you make those passes on the inside? And maybe you don't full on make the pass here early because you really don't need to, but you're learning where you can make those moves and where your car works for, let's say, 200 laps from now on lap 254 when you're trying to charge up to the front.
Yeah, every lap is going to be a test session in the early stages of this race, and here you go, Van de Sant making a move. But you're kind of thinking throughout this whole thing is, you're going to have tires that are this same age at some point in the race again. So understanding every single lap, understanding the way the tires wear is going to be so crucial for these guys. And that's why you get multiple stints, multiple different sets of tires that you're going to run through, because it's going to change a little bit with conditions. It's going to change a little bit in general with temperature, track temperature, air temperature, all that kind of stuff that's going on, rubber being laid down on the track. But ultimately, you need to be prepared for whatever this car is going to do throughout the run. Be prepared to adjust your driving style, change that, adjust that weight jacker however it needs to be adjusted over the course of the tire run, because that's the biggest tool you have in the cockpit.
As we work lap number 57 here, about to get to the lap 60 mark, which we're about where we were when that first yellow came out. I believe that was on lap 26. So we're about 24 to 25 laps here on to this stint. And again, it's been a dominating performance so far by Adriano Pinheiro. Chad Frankenfield is second. Mark Murphy is third. Alex Van de Sande up to fourth. And we might have to check in during a yellow, but did something go wrong for him in qualifying? Because that car is on rails, and it's hard to believe that he would start 17th.
Yeah, it kind of is. Unfortunately, I don't quite have access to his qualifying time. I might even request our guy on the ground there, Dave Huckleberry, to check that out. Maybe it was a bit of a mistake in qualifying that just resulted in that. But I don't actually know if we can even go back and check the replays from quali. But if you can, Dave, let us know. Shoot us a message here, because that would be really interesting. Because there's definitely pace in this 97. And right now, he's about to break into the top 3 for the first time this race as he makes the pass on Mark Murphy on the inside. He's going to slide up, and it's complete. Alex Van de Sande has entered the conversation, has 3 seconds to get to Chad Frankenfield, but very much on the move right now. We'll see now what his pace looks like in clean air. Last lap was 0.2 of a second slower than those 2 leaders, who we haven't talked about much in this run, but we'll give him 1 or 2 laps, and we'll take a look. That net code that took Justin Fortner out of the race. They're actually going to be reviewing that post-race. I think Fortner might have requested a review on that one. So they'll take a look at that. Penalty points could be issued, but as of right now, unfortunately, the 12 car out of this one.
If we can, let's cut to the onboard camera there for Adriano Pinheiro, because this looks like they should be pretty close to getting to the back of the field here. To start in May, you can see that first car right in front of him there. So we're about 2 to 3 laps from catching the back of this field as he goes about 182 into that corner. And you see the speed drop off down to about 172 down the backstretch. Will hit about 194, then back down again. This is a track where it has a lot of speed changes, but you're turning that wheel about 90% of this course as we hit about 190 down the front straightaway.
It's just crazy to me just thinking about that. These guys are averaging, about 175 miles an hour around a 7/8 of a mile oval. It is ridiculous, the speeds here. And you can just watch from this onboard. It's almost mesmerizing as there's a car actually off on the bottom of the racetrack. I'm not sure who that was. But man, oh man, I mean, just the speed of this track. And again, these guys are doing this 300 times. This can get pretty mesmerizing just doing this again and again and again. These things are ridiculously short. Already another one complete. They're still running 18-second laps here, 30 laps or so into this run.
And that just shows you, Rish, there's no room for error, right? I mean, you could literally, on some of these road courses or maybe even Indianapolis Motor Speedway, you've got a pretty long straightaway where you could, stretch out your fingers or maybe look away from the screen for a quick second just to take a little bit of a breather. But here at Iowa, you are constantly steering that wheel, and you're constantly driving this car for the entire duration of that 17-second lap.
Yeah, I mean, it's just hard work for these guys, and now, of course, that work becomes even harder for our leaders because here comes lap traffic. The first car 1 lap down is going to be, I believe that's Eric Macedo, just in front of our leader, Adriano Pinheiro. Pinheiro does a good job of getting by him, and Macedo does a good job. Maybe not there, so Macedo holding on the outside. And so, yeah, that's another thing we're going to have to take a look at here is, potentially as well, if these guys are on a little bit fresher tires or they've saved their tires, this is going to become tricky for Pinheiro. This is taking him longer than he'd hoped for, and now Frankenfield right on his gearbox. Not as straightforward as he was hoping, and that got very close off of turn 4.
Yeah, and we were talking about it earlier, Rich. You almost want to be the second guy, the driver running second. See where the moves are, and Frankenfield pushes it way high and loses some gap to the leader there, Pinheiro, but you almost want to be the second guy because that leader kind of gives you the line that you should take. But they're very hard for both the top 2 drivers to get around that first lap car. Now the second go round, Pinheiro gets by easily, almost a brush on the wall there from the lap car. Frankenfield gets by easily as well. Looks like Pinheiro's been taking the high side around, while Frankenfield using most of the racetrack here. He goes on the low line in 3 and 4, and 6 of the low line here in 1 and 2, but using a lot of that racetrack as Pinheiro continues to work through some of this lap traffic.
Yeah, for sure. And gap opens up a little bit. Frankenfield got held up a little bit, but in all of this, Van de Sant's gotten closer to these guys. Was 3 seconds when he originally cleared Mark Murphy. Now sits at 1 second to Chad Frankenfield in second place. Again, this 97 car flying right now. That last lap, similar pace to the two guys in front of him, because I think he himself had to lap a couple of cars. But yeah, I mean, we'll see how this plays out. 1.4 seconds. Again, lost a little bit of time there. But potentially here under green, could we see Alexander Van de Sant start to catch these guys? Meanwhile, Frankenfield still kind of around that half a second mark behind Adriano Pinheiro. Got a little bit closer when they started lapping cars. That as of right now, no real forward movement there for the 15 car. Meanwhile, battle going on here side by side for Craig Forsyth, Thomas Geisler, Jared Rexing as well getting involved in this fantastic battle right now for the 7th position.
Yeah, battling back and forth here. You see that yellow car seems to have the line going into 3 here, takes it to the inside, and some movement throughout the field. But these guys are also real close to catching some of that lap traffic towards the back as well, as we are just over 75 laps completed here in the Iowa Corn 300. Let's take a quick breather. Let's go on board, if you don't mind, with Alex Van de Sant as he continues to stalk the leaders and maneuver his way through traffic.
Right on board now within 1 second of Chad Frankenfield. That, in fact, I believe is the 15 car just in front. And then just even a little bit further there is going to be Adriano Pinheiro. It is getting very close between our leaders and the man who started all the way back in 17th position. Update on Victor Del Porto up into the 11th position. Actually, update on his qualifying as well. Didn't put in a qualifying time, so Del Porto wanted to start in the back here, maybe get some laps in at a lower pace, but of course he runs the risk. He's now 3 cars away from going a lap down, so keep an eye out on that. But right now, just the pace of Alexander Van de Sant, that last lap, 0.2 of a second faster than than Chad Frankenfield. This guy was closing very quickly. He's now within half a second of that 15.
We talked about how quickly they're clicking off these laps in 17 seconds. All of a sudden, you got to deal with lap traffic and maneuvering that. And there is no room for error here at the Iowa Speedway, because if Pinheiro has a checkup, gets a little bit high, which we saw when Chad Frankenfield was passing some of that lap traffic as well. These guys will pounce, and there's a lot of these drivers too. You want to race hard to stay on the lead lap, but you also want to be respectful of the leaders. But once you go a lap down here, Rish, it is so hard to gain that lap back. We saw him. You fight with the leader, and if you can hold him off for a lap or two and hope for a yellow, great. If not, it seems to be letting him go. So we have a battle here for the 2nd position. Chad Frankenfield and Alex Van de Sant battling for 2nd. Van de Sant has got that gap down to about 2 car lengths here for that 2nd position.
Yeah, and Van de Sant continues to lap 0.2 of a second faster than Frankenfield. There's so much pace in that 97 car right now. In fact, he's one of the only guys, him and Adriano Pinheiro really are the only guys even remotely close to running in the 17-second range, high 17 seconds. Everybody else, mid-18s. Jared Rexing actually just put in a 17.97 a little bit further back in 6th. But here we go, the inside line for Van de Sant. It's going to slow him down just a little bit going side by side here, but fantastic pace right now and fantastic longevity. We said Frankenfield was a little bit of a concern for him, was the longevity throughout the tire run. Great short run pace, a little bit suffering in the long run here. The biggest thing for Frankenfield right now is to not push that car too far. If Van de Sant is that much faster at this point in the run, let him go and figure out the pace of your car. You have a long way to go in this race. Still over 2/3 distance in this race to go for Frankenfield. Obviously defend like crazy right now, but if that 97 car just puts you in a position that you can't defend, let him go at this point in the race. There's no point in defending that, and save yourself a little bit of time as well. But right now, great defensive drive from Chad Frankenfield, but definitely needs to figure out some of that long run pace in that 15 car, because what the 97 and 56 car are doing right now could be a race winning formula in terms of speed in those cars.
Yeah, and like you said, if you're Chad Frankenfield here, not really going to do you much good to race a driver that seems to be faster. Don't give away any of your stuff or any of your secrets or what line you might take later in the race. Kind of just let him go by as we reach lap number 89 here. But yeah, it's been a very, very impressive charge to the front. Alex Van de Sant, who is now in the 3rd position, battling for 2nd. But as they battle it out, it looks like Adriano Pinheiro has certainly checked out from these top 2.
Yeah, he absolutely has. He's over a second up the road from this battle in front of these two drivers. So again, the battling itself is kind of separated, and I think Van de Sant maybe a little bit held up right now by Frankenfield. We saw the laps he was running before, but again, Frankenfield doing everything he needs to do. He's kind of running all over the racetrack, doing whatever he needs to do, and running the right lines to prevent any runs from Van de Sant. So again, hats off to Frankenfield on this defensive run, because I think realistically that 97 is a much quicker car at this point in this race. But right now, he's not giving up this position at all. And Van de Sant's had a couple of looks, but Frankenfield's not letting him through any easily.
As he looks to the inside here, Pinheiro now into the second spot. He gets around Frankenfield. Frankenfield battles back on the outside. We could be coming up here, Rish, on some pit stops as well. A little over 60 laps since that first caution in those pit stops, as Frankenfield holds them off and takes that second position back as they head down into turn number 1.
Yeah, not sure exactly what our fuel window is going to look like for these cars, because again, last pitted lap 27, so right now about 60 or so, a little bit more than that, 67 laps into this particular run. Yeah, I don't quite know. I thought they could go over 100 laps, but that could be wrong for me. I could be also thinking of the Cup cars right now, but not sure if you know off the top of your head either from real life IndyCar.
I'm assuming anywhere between 75 to 80, if not mistaken, is where that window kind of opens up, which we're at about lap 70 right now. So we may see it here over the next 15 to 20 laps, bare minimum. And I think we have a yellow on the course. We sure do. So that'll answer. Oh, big old pile up.
It's a big one.
Adriano Pinheiro. Is it the leader?
I think it was. It was absolutely Adriano Pinheiro. Wow.
So the leader, Adriano Pinheiro, coming off of turn number 4. Let's take a look at the Whiskey Cask replay, bringing out the second caution of the evening. Let's see what happens to the leader.
So he was late on the scene, I'll say that. We'll watch the aftermath of this, but this is what happened to Pinheiro. There's that crash, and he just slides up into it. But there's a huge crash already on the racetrack when he shows up at the scene. And I think, was that Frankenfield as well who made contact?
No, I think Frankenfield made it through cleanly, if not mistaken. He's showing in second still behind Van de Sant. But let's go back and let's see. Frankenfield here locks him up.
Yeah, there was a hit.
There was some contact there with who was the leader there in Pinheiro. So terrible luck here for Adriano Pinheiro. But it looked like it came a few cars up the track. And just nowhere to go once you arrived on the scene.
Absolutely, and it looks like it's going to start here with Eric Troiano. Not sure who he's battling with here. Here's the 14 car with the 47 of Joseph Grijalva, and there they go into the wall. That's what kicks it off. You get more contact from two other drivers. Again, can't quite see those numbers there. 52. Adriano Pinheiro gets caught up in that lot of cars. Again, we're gonna have to slow this down a little bit on this caution. We've got some time. Let's take a look at how this all plays out.
What terrible luck here as they're battling 3 wide into turn number 3 as we slow it down here.
So,
and I just he kind of comes down on him there a little bit, but for Eric Troiano there, just looks like a little bit too of an ambitious move here, way too early on going into 3. You know, usually you just say, okay, I'll give up that spot a little bit. And then sliding back down the race course, there's some contact, taking out 3, 4 other cars with them. And then...
Yeah, Craig Forsyth. I think Marshall Stanley was one of those cars. We see Thomas Geisler was one of those. Eric Macedo actually made it through there. Victor Del Porto actually slides in there, and he was okay. He might actually be totally okay. That car went to a complete halt. We don't have to watch on board here with Victor Del Porto, but that was the contact for Pinheiro as he slid trying to avoid. And Frankenfield, this contact actually, Frankenfield is now out of this race as well. So both Pinheiro and Frankenfield, the top two drivers for the entirety of this race so far, out of this one because of this incident.
Absolute terrible luck for both. Rish, if possible, we might be able to dial in and talk to Chad to see just kind of what he saw, and was he able to even make a move, or did he just arrive on the scene too quickly?
For sure. We're going to take a look. But first, I want to watch this on board with Victor Del Porto, because I think this might be very close to avoiding this wreck completely. Here he is slamming on the brakes. Oh, he does still make contact. He does make some slight contact, but there you see that huge hit for our race leader. And again, fortunately, these are all virtual cars because that would have been a massive one in terms of a hit for Adriano Pinheiro. But yeah, man, oh man, we've got a lot of cars out of this one now. Of course, Del Porto actually might be one of them as he's still on pit road here. Now sits about over a second or a minute and a half on pit road. Man.
Unfortunate luck. You know, you're battling a little bit too early on towards the back of the field. And we talked about it. As fast as you're ripping off laps here, as fast as you're going around this bull ring, you know, it takes almost at least a half of a lap to get your car slowed up. And when that happens in front of you, there's just absolutely nowhere to go.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll take a quick look. Not sure if we have anybody in our waiting room in terms of drivers. Unfortunately not. Would have been great to talk to anybody about kind of what happened there. But yeah, absolutely. This is a complete game changer in this race. Right now, it's showing us just 8 drivers on the lead lap, maybe just 11 drivers actually running on the racetrack after all that. So that's crazy. That's taken out more than half of our field, or excuse me, almost half our field, which is just ridiculous, the size of that wreck.
So Alex Van de Sant is up 16 spots. He's been on the charge throughout the first 100 laps of this race. He takes over the lead with Nicholas Sudik now second. Mark Murphy is third. Jared Rexing up 11 spots, now finds himself fourth. Then A.J. Musselman. Gil Ribeiro is now sixth. He's up 10 spots. Ball Vans is up 7 spots. He's seventh. Hasek is up 13 spots. He is eighth. So the war of attrition here will be the name of this race, it seems like, Rish. And you would hope that we are done as we go back to green flag racing here with these yellows. But yeah, like you said, is the green flag will come out here next time by on lap 102. But Rish, I mean, just avoiding somebody else's mistake might be the key to finishing this one out cleanly.
Absolutely, yeah, and that's one of the things. We talked about how small this racetrack is in terms of traffic and in terms of what you're doing when you're on your own and how much action is going on in the cockpit, but we didn't talk about the reaction time necessary and distance that you need to slow your car down from 175, 180 miles an hour. That's what you're running at the, at the apex here of the corner. Maybe it's lower to 165, 170 miles an hour, but still to slow down to a halt is near impossible. These guys also strip out a lot of the brake diameter on these cars to move back to green flag racing. So you don't have that same stopping power anymore, and there you see the result of it. If there's a big crash, unfortunately for a lot of these drivers, there's nowhere you can go, and especially at a small track like this, it's going to be really hard to avoid an incident, as we just saw there.
I think Chad Frankenfield is trying to join us as we go back to the green flag. Whenever Chad is available, please let us know here. We would like to know his perspective on the accident as Van de Sant pulls out to a pretty good lead here over the number 21 car of Nicholas Sudik. He is currently second, and Mark Murphy third. Jared Rexing is fourth, with A.J. Musselman currently in the fifth position, just past lap number 100. A third of the way through this one, and a big shakeup. If you're just joining us, our second caution knocked out about half of the field.
Yeah, just absolutely crazy, how that played out. And the word is we were going to have Chad Frankenfield joining us, but apparently that car might be repairable enough that he can bring that and keep that running to go out and grab a couple of points still in terms of passing, especially those guys in front of him who were taken out by that incident. But realistically, it's just Del Porto in front of him. But if you're Alexander Van de Sant, this is the dream scenario. He's now leading this race, and his 3 championship contenders, Victor Del Porto, Chad Frankenfield, Adriano Pinheiro, were all taken out in that wreck.
Yeah, and look, I know we talked about this. I'm not trying to jinx anybody, but this track is so short. You're flying around it so quickly. There's battles usually. I mean, obviously now we've got about half of the field out there, but this might not be the last accident that we see. So if you're Frankenfield, you can get that thing out there and log the rest of the laps. You might be able to move up 2 to 3 spots as he rejoins the track here down the back straightaway heading into turn number 3. Chad Frankenfield back in the pack, but again, he is certainly a tremendous amount of laps down. I believe, if not mistaken,
10 laps,
10 laps, yeah, 10 or 11 laps behind the field, or behind the leaders.
Yeah, and unfortunately for him, Victor Del Porto, who was the other guy who was technically taken out by this incident in front of him, is back out on the racetrack as well. He's, again, not quite up to racing speed. Last lap was an 18.7, but, that car wounded, but still running right now. Frankenfield will get him around for a lap or two. We'll see what the pace is in this 15 car. According to this, it's showing him as a 17.8 that last lap around. 17.47. Frankenfield actually putting in personal best lap times of the race here. So that 15 car driving in anger, and despite whatever damage is on board it, no major pace loss. It's obviously, though, the 10 laps, 11 laps down that he is from the rest of this pack that's going to hurt him. But that car can still move, and for Frankenfield, he just sets the fastest lap of the race there, 17.43. That car is flying.
Yeah, and again, we talked about this in the first couple of laps. Sometimes the luck for Chad Frankenfield hasn't been there throughout this season as Van de Sant continues to lead. Nicholas Sudek, Mark Murphy is third. Jarek Rexing now up fourth in that Nesquik car. AJ Musselman is currently fifth as we are 115 or so laps completed. Nice little battle going on right here, Rish.
Yeah, absolutely. Jared Rexing, one of those other big movers, and he was moving forward before that wreck, but obviously benefited from a lot of those guys being taken out. Jared Rexing now up inside fourth position, started in 15th, and has a shot right now at a podium, chasing down Mark Murphy, who's still in that third spot where he started. Mark Murphy having a very solid night so far. Again, started third, right now running in the third position, dropped a few when Van de Sant got by him, as well as some of the other drivers, but still fantastic run right now, and he's holding on that top lane, making that top lane work and finding pace up there right now. Between himself and Rexing, that last lap, just 5/100ths of a second, so very little in it between these two. It's going to be a great battle here for the next few laps.
Yeah, absolutely, and we're going to look back. Look, not to take anything away from Alex Van de Sant, because he's up 16 spots and has been the quickest car mostly throughout this night. But kind of like Marcus Ericsson, Rish, when the top two contenders have problems or have some bad luck, you've got to be there to pounce, and he certainly was here. Obviously, we have more than half of this race still to go, but his top two contenders to win this race have fallen out. Nicholas Sudek is currently just biding his time, riding around in second. Mark Murphy, Jared Rexing still doing a little bit of battle here as we see going back and forth right here as they pass the start-finish line. But sometimes a little luck has to fall into your hands to win some of these races.
Absolutely, and this is not to say that Alexander Van de Sant needed any luck there. He was, in fact, catching our leaders at the time of that caution, but still, it's obviously unfortunate for our championship battle, because this could potentially mean that it's all said and done by the time we get to our finale, and guys will be fighting out for that second place in the championship. But we'll have to see. Double points could still leave things a little bit open, but if Del Porto, Pinheiro right now, little ways down the order, Frankenfield as well, and Van de Sant continues to lead the way, and if he comes out victorious here, long way to go, of course, it could be a very big hole to dig yourself out of in terms of the championship contenders.
Yeah, Rich, talk about the remainder of the schedule here coming up and the double points that can certainly put a shakeup into things.
Absolutely, yeah. Double points on offer for the final race of the season here. It's going to be taking place on the 17th, so just 1 week time at Worldwide Technology Raceway. 260 laps there. It's going to be a great race. Again, not really a short track, a bull ring like Iowa. It's a 1.25-mile oval. It feels small for IndyCar, but NASCAR Cup Series, who just raced there this past week, seemed like a relatively normal-sized racetrack, so it's all perspective. But we normally will hold our championship finales there, and they put on some fantastic races for us over the past few years, and hoping for another great race. Might not, again, have that same championship implications associated with it, but, I mean, that also has to credit Alexander Van de Sant the season he's had, and he's won at both ovals and road courses. Of course, one at Kansas, then one at Long Beach, one at the Indianapolis, one at Watkins Glen. Not sure why I was saying the Indianapolis road course. One at Watkins Glen, and right now he's been showing some great pace. Obviously had the luck, has the lead right now at Iowa Speedway. This would be a very well-rounded championship season if Van de Sant were to get it done, winning on a road course, a short oval, an intermediate oval, and a street course.
Indeed, and we'll see it in IndyCar this weekend. Joseph Newgarden, who is now, fifth in the points after a disappointing month of May, could win $1 million for himself and a fan with the win at Road America coming up on Sunday. 125 laps complete here in this one in the Iowa Corn 300 in the Mega Driver 86 IndyCar Series. As we continue to watch this battle here between Jared Rexing. Let's step aside for a quick break. We'll be back if anything happens into the action. But we'll be back right after this. You're watching the Elite Racing Network in the Iowa Corn 300. All right, we're approaching the halfway point here of the Iowa Corn Indy 300, the Elite Mega Driver 86 IndyCar Series. Tony Donahue, Rish is with me as well. A little bit of some napkin math during the break there, Rish. What do you know about the point scenario and what we could see coming up at next week's race at Worldwide Technology Raceway?
Absolutely. So, reminder, this is all napkin math and nothing official at all, but figured out basically 54 points is the maximum a driver can achieve for winning pole position, leading the most laps of the race. 54 points is what a driver can earn at a race weekend. Of course, next week is going to be double points, so 108 points on offer for the winner. Right now, the gap between Van de Sant and Victor Del Porto coming into this race was 41 points. That's going to extend about 30 or so points, maybe a little bit more, a little bit less. It's all going to depend on bonus points. Also, of course, without saying if Van de Sant wins the race, this is how things run as it is. If Van de Sant grabs all those bonus points, he will be, I believe, about 105 or 85 or 86 points ahead of Del Porto and Pinheiro. Now, the thing is, though, that also takes into account that we get 33 starters. That's how the points run. If we have 20 starters next week, Alexander Van de Sant shows up and he gets another 10 or so points added to his name. So it's going to be really close, but I think basically if Van de Sande starts next week, assuming things run the same way, he will clinch the championship, but I'm not too sure he can mathematically clinch it tonight. Ooh, a crash on the racetrack for Chad Frankenfield reported.
Ooh.
Here's the 15
Oh,
car, and there it goes around.
Chased it up the track, tried to save it, and into the wall. So a craptacular night for Chad Frankenfield continues on here as we look back at the Whiskey Cask replay. Looks like we will stay green as we itch ever closer to the halfway point here of the Iowa Corn Indy 300. Blue Egg Marketing, the marketing department for small businesses. We're your marketing department for small business owners. We are your biggest fan. We help businesses punch above their weight class. Blue Egg Marketing.
Have them on board with us. Great battle going on right now for the 4th position on the racetrack. Joe Ribeiro, AJ Musselman, Joe Ribeiro, AJ Musselman, Mark Murphy right in front. That's where the battle really is. Here we go. Musselman making that move to the inside of Ribeiro. My bad. I'm losing track of things. That's a lapped car there. But yeah, Musselman, Ribeiro, and Murphy. Ribeiro and Murphy are the two that are close together on the racetrack right now. Musselman a little bit further back, but still staying close. The rest of the field relatively spread out here. It's 4 seconds up the road to 3rd place Nicholas Sudik, and 2nd place driver Jared Rexing a further second ahead of that. Rexing, we kind of missed that, is up into the 2nd position past Nicholas Sudik. In terms of lap times, Rexing closing in little by little on Alexander Van de Sande. Of course, it is still a 6-second lead for our race leader in that 97 car, but that last time around, Jared Rexing about a 1/10 of a second faster. We'll see if that was just a single lap deal or if it was for multiple laps. That last lap, 6/100ths of a second, so there or thereabouts. Definitely a pace advantage right now for the 10 car, but not significant enough to really close that 6-second gap down. But keep that in mind as we get closer. If we do see another caution as we just passed the halfway mark in this race, Van de Sande not totally untouchable, I think, in this race.
I would agree. I think we're going to see Rexing have something for him. Obviously, he's the 2nd biggest mover of this race behind the leader, Van de Sande. Nicholas Sudik is the guy that we know will go for it late. Mark Murphy's been consistent right there inside of the top 5, as has AJ Musselman as we hit the halfway point here of the Iowa Corn Indy 300. It's been a fast-paced race here, Rish. I mean, we went green, about 45 minutes ago, and we're already halfway home.
Yeah, you know, it's been going by relatively quickly, which is certainly nice up here when things do move a little bit quicker. Yeah, I mean, guys have been relatively well behaved. Obviously, there was that one incident, and even that was really just 2 cars kind of coming together, and it was the aftermath that kind of messed some of the stuff up in terms of taking out a number of drivers. But for the most part, the racing has been extremely respectful between drivers. They've been doing a great job at giving each other space, racing fairly. And of course, that does start to play into effect a little bit more when you have fewer drivers on the racetrack. All of a sudden, there's less guys to get into it with each other. But still, outside of the 2 little incidents that we've seen. Very relative term. Outside of the 2 incidents, though, guys have been very respectful, and that's been good to see. Again, the car is racing well, and that's important. Right now, just a little bit of a spread because of this green flag run. We could see green flag pit stops coming up relatively soon, as we're about, again, 60 laps into this run. Really, more or less where we were when that last caution came out in the run. We'll see if we actually get to green flag stops this time, or if we could see another issue. Right now, again, closest battle on track, Ribeiro and Musselman, and that's 3/4 of a second right now. So in theory, nobody too close together on the racetrack to really get into it with one another.
Yeah, and if we could real quick, let's go on board with the 2nd place driver, Jared Rexing. Look, you got a fast car, but you're kind of just out there putting laps down. You're a little bit past halfway. You got to stay patient. You're not quite ready to pounce. You don't want to make any mistakes or moves, especially knowing all the drivers that are already out of the race, which include Pinheiro and Frankenfield, 2 contenders today. So, Rish, walk us through this. If you're Jared Rexing, you're being patient. You can see the leader. You're putting down some good lap times. You're about ready to go, but I think we're about another 100 laps away from really seeing some battles up front.
Yeah, we're quite some ways away. For Jared Rexing, what he can do is potentially look at maybe a little bit of an undercut, as he's going to have to clear this lap car. Um, but yeah, look at maybe even a little bit of an undercut. 1 or 2 laps could be significant. Though admittedly, the drop-off in tires has been not as big as we thought maybe when we saw that first stop when guys came down after about 20 laps. Right now, the driver's only about 2 to 3 tenths slower per lap than what they're doing on fresh tires. And that's, of course, with the fuel burn, so it kind of evens out a little bit there. But you can still get a little bit of an advantage. Right now, Rexing is faster than Alexander Van de Sande. That is a fact on the racetrack. Van de Sande, a couple laps ago, lost quite a big chunk of time to Jared Rexing, probably due to a lap car. That gap now down to 4.5 seconds. It was 5.5 seconds not too long ago. So for Rexing right now, it's just stay consistent, keep doing what you're doing. Whatever he's doing is working, and he's closing that gap to Alexander Van de Sande, and kind of let it come to you. Let that pit strategy play out. If you have an opportunity to maybe open up your pit window 1 or 2 laps earlier than Van de Sande will, I'd say take it. I think that's going to be an advantage because you saw with Chad Frankenfield, you can defend pretty well, even if you're maybe about a tenth or so slower than the guy behind you. So being on those slightly older tires and getting that advantage of fresh tires early on with an undercut, I think is going to be advantageous here. Obviously, you don't want to go for too big of a swing there and get yourself out of a pit window, but I think as soon as that pit window opens for these guys, it could be worthwhile to take it down there and try something out. I think for Rexing, that's going to be one of your best bets, especially if you stay green here. It's going to be hard to close that gap up just under 5 laps.
Yeah, and this will be the first set. Not that to knock on wood or jinx anything, but be the first set, the first round of green flag stops. And if I'm Rexing, I'm right there. I've got to hit my marks, be perfect. We know Adriano Pinheiro is out. We know Chad Frankenfield is out. But again, Alex Van de Sande is not a guy that is going to make mistakes, as we know. This is the guy that is going to be there. He's obviously the points there. He's won many races here as these guys continue to battle through some lap traffic here towards the back of the field.
Yeah, for sure. And for Rexing, he's been exceptional, especially on the ovals this season. He's really stepped it up in terms of his involvement here in the Indycar series. Started out really last season when he started to get really competitive and start fighting towards the front of the pack, and especially on the ovals here, he's been absolutely fantastic. And this is what we're seeing right now from Rexing again. It's just this consistency on the ovals. Maybe not the ultimate outright pace, because in terms of best lap time overall, Rexing is ahead. But Van de Sande, is that an issue for the 97 car? It is.
Oh, wow. So it looks like an issue here. He is off the pace. Let's take a look back at the whiskey cask replay. Did he just maybe get a little too high? Battling with the lap car, sends it in, and it just shoots up the racetrack, makes contact through the grass. He goes, surprised this doesn't bring out a yellow, but again, he keeps it going. Get back on it. Let's see if he's only lost, it looks like 1 spot currently. This may not be a killer for him, Rish, with pit stops probably 10 to 12 laps away anyway. He's just going to come in a little bit sooner, but that could have been way worse for the leader.
It could have been a lot worse for sure, and it's recoverable, and smart call right there to come down pit road a little bit early and now employ that undercut strategy that we were just talking about for Rexing, and now try and gain back some of that time lost. So we'll see if any damage there on the Van de Sande car, but looked like it was kind of a clean hit on the tires, and it was. So awesome there for Alexander Van de Sande in terms of his title hopes. He comes back out onto the racetrack, no major issues, still in the 4th position. Of course, a lap or 2 behind Rexing and Sudik, but those guys are going to have to come down pit road here relatively soon as well. And here we go. Jared Rexing does dive down onto pit road. Here comes our now race leader, and we'll get a chance once he comes off pit road to see what that gap actually looks like now between Van de Sande and Rexing.
Yeah, and we talked about the luck. You got to have some luck, especially at a place like Iowa where anything can go wrong in a dime, which we saw the top 2 drivers early in the race. Then, that happens, and the 97 car of Van de Sande pounces, and now a spin ends up keeping it pointed forward, and he's back on the track. And this was only about 4 to 5 laps prior to probably when he was going to pit anyway. So a bit of a sigh of relief here for who was the leader in Alex Van de Sande. And we'll see where he cycles back up, as he's already back up in the 3rd spot here with Musselman and Rexing ahead of him.
Yeah, and we'll see where he cycles out relative to Jared Rexing, who has just officially come off pit road. So it's a sizable gap, but Van de Sande up to speed right now. We'll see what it officially comes out to once they're both running. It's going to be under 4 seconds. So definitely not game over for Alexander Van de Sande, and could actually, for us up here in the booth, give us a little bit of a dogfight out on the racetrack between Rexing and Van de Sande now. It's going to sit and settle out at, it's still actually closing a little bit as Rexing continues to get up to speed. Slowing down, it's going to be about 3 seconds is the gap between Van de Sande and Rexing, as Musselman now finally comes down pit road and is going to hand the lead back over to the 10 and 97. But yeah, here we go, game on now. Van de Sande becomes the chaser, and Jared Rexing now the guy who has to manage the race, take care of that gap, and try and prevent Van de Sande from getting by. But of course, track position advantage now goes towards Jared Rexing.
And Rish, you talked about this a little bit earlier. Talk about the adjustments that you have to make coming out of the pit stop, inside of the cockpit, adjusting your tools. And now all of a sudden, if you're Jared Rexing for the first time, you find yourself in some clean air leading this race, which will certainly make your car feel a little bit different.
Yeah, it definitely will. One of those things you're going to have to get on that weight tracker just a little bit, because normally when you're in traffic, you adjust it for that lack of front-end grip that you're going to have with just the aero wash that you get. All of a sudden now, that car is going to be very, very on the nose, so you want to kind of settle that back down as you kind of run here. And it looks like Rexing's kind of done that. No real loose nature that we're seeing from that 10 car, at least nothing noticeable from up here in the booth. And the next thing is do what apparently Alexander Van de Sande didn't on that particular issue. Is Alexander Van de Sande didn't get on comms and let that lapped car know where he was going on the racetrack. And that's one of those things that you need to do as a leader, is you have communication with all drivers in the race, and as the leader you need to tell a lap car saying, hey, I'm planning to go here on the racetrack, I'm coming at you, this is where I think I'm going to be able to pass you, just so he knows what's going on, because ultimately that lap car has its own race to run as well, can't always be staring in the mirrors. So a little bit of a miscommunication there, or lack of communication from Van de Sande, so Rexing can learn from that there, and now he sees, I think that's the exact same car just in front of him. Not actually sure who it is. I have to flip back a few cars until we can figure out exactly who it is on the racetrack. And actually, I have no idea who's currently running out on the racetrack and is about to go down. It's actually Joe Ribeiro there in the 07. And just be on the comms, be on the button, and say, hey, by the way, Jill, I'm going to go to the inside in 1 and 2, or I'm going to go to the outside in 3 or 4. Just let him know what that plan is so that you can communicate the best and avoid an incident that we saw there with the 97. See here if Rexing can make that move on Ribeiro, and of course how that plays out for him. Of course, hopefully a little bit smoother than it went for Alexander Van de Sande. Meanwhile, that gap between the two leaders not really shrinking too much. Jared Rexing holding a really good pace right now in the early stages of this run. Van de Sande not quite able to close it up too much. Right now sits at 2.9 seconds, and that's been after probably about 6 or 7 laps from when it was 3 seconds before, so a little bit of an advantage for Van de Sande. We'll see, though, if this lap traffic starts to help close that gap up just a little tiny bit here, as it looks like it has. Now down to 2.6 for Van de Sande. Rexing going to want to try and get by Ribeiro relatively quickly, but right now struggling a little bit with that. Should have this inside line. I think that 07 car should give it up, but of course he is still fighting for a spot on the lead lap. So not going to be the easiest in terms of easiest pass for a lapped car, but Jared Rexing's going to make that work, and Ribeiro does ultimately give it up.
Yeah, finally gets around him there, and kind of some hold your breath moments as he looks back to the outside. And Jared Rexing's probably thinking, "Come on, man! I know you don't want to go a lap down because it's tough to get that lap back, but I'm trying to get around you." He finally does, puts a little bit of gap between him and the lap car, as he has a 2.2 second lead over Van de Sande and an 8.9 second lead over Nicholas Sudek. But again, you can't count out Alex Van de Sande, who, as we know, has charged throughout this race to get up towards the front, as has Rexing. But it seems like Van de Sande, since the green flag flew to start this race, has the best car so far. As we approach that lap number 200, we're at lap number 189 right now. If you're a guy like Murphy, Rish, or even Ribeiro, who just went a lap down, for Ribeiro, you're the only car a lap down. That's why you probably battled a little bit harder there than maybe you should have. But we only have 5 cars on the lead lap. If we see a late race yellow here, Rich, there's going to be some crazy drama and some crazy pit stop strategies Do you come in and get tires for a long run? I want to see it. I want to see, and I think we will, some excitement here over this last 110 laps.
Absolutely. Right now, guys, again, spread out on the racetrack. We've gotten 0 close battles going on the racetrack. Actually, the closest one we've got here is 1 second between Jari Brubaker and Eric Macedo up in front. And this is the battle for 9th place. These guys are, in fact, a couple laps down, actually, from our leaders. But, yeah, I mean, we'd love to see that battle play out and have, like, a proper, real fight for the lead that goes on the racetrack. But that's also what kind of the short track racing is in IndyCar as well, is on these long runs, is stretching out that gap. And the guys who are good are going to get up front and they're going to extend the gap. The guys who are not as good are going to kind of fall back, lose a lap or two, and we'll see. But right now, yeah, 4 cars on the lead lap, and that could even reduce here pretty soon, as I think Jared Rexing is getting pretty close to Mark Murphy, and there, in fact, he is going past Mark Murphy. So now just the top 3 on the lead lap, though he's not quite clear of that 69 car. He is now. So now it's just your top 3 all of a sudden. So caution doesn't maybe open things up as much. But yeah, if those guys do decide to stay out on the racetrack, gain that lap back, they're still at a disadvantage, though, because they're getting that wave around and don't get the track position benefit. So, oh man, I don't know, but it's turning into, it's kind of been a 2-horse race. The horses have changed. Obviously, it was Pinheiro and Frankenfield early in the race, but right now it seems like it's only Rexing and Van de Sant with a shout. We'll see if Sudik can find something, but right now sits 9 seconds behind Rexing, 7 seconds behind Van de Sant, not really closing that gap. In fact, it's opening up just a little bit as well.
Yeah, and if I'm Jared Rexing, I'm just putting down the best laps that I can. I don't really need to move any further. I mean, you've got a really good gap at about 2.2 seconds to Van de Sant. And I think if you're Van de Sant, you're just kind of lurking, right? You got a couple more stops left, at least one more stop. You might see another yellow. But again, he's going to have his hands full here to try to work this lap traffic. And it looks like he may get around here with ease. But, this lap car of Ribeiro here, it's taken the leaders 4 or 5 laps to be able to get around.
Yeah, Ribeiro, I mean, again, fantastic defending. For this one here, I don't know what you do as Ribeiro, because obviously he wants to have his car back on the lead lap, but also Van de Sant's not the car who's putting him, overall a lap down. That's already happened. So do you defend as fiercely for Joe Ribeiro here, or do you kind of play it out here and just kind of let Alexander Van de Sant go? It looks like a little bit cleaner, but right now, still giving Van de Sant a pretty good fight here for this lap position, and now finally Van de Sant gets by, but Ribeiro looks like he wants to try and get back by the 97 car, but doesn't in 3 and 4.
Yeah, and a battle here going back and forth, and you don't want to waste up some of your stuff. We have completed 200 of the 300 laps here in the Iowa Corn Indy 300. Pit stop should be just around the corner here. We want to thank Powerhouse Recycling. They strive to offer the highest level of customer service in the industry for each load process, time and time again. Attainable, accountable representatives, prompt and on-time pickups, and customized recycling solutions keep Powerhouse Recycling as the North Carolina market leader in customer service. They believe in quality customer service before, during, and after the processing of a client's materials. They strongly believe there are superior customer service, customized recycling, and complete transparency. We can earn our clients' business and hold longevity in our business relationships. We've reached lap number 200. And again, some of these lap traffic now, it's going to get really exciting here for the 3 cars, Rish, that are on the lead lap with 97 laps to go.
Yeah, it is, and Van de Sant still has to get by Mark Murphy, who's another one of those cars just now going down a lap. But the gap, as Van de Sant's trying to clear some of these lap cars, has gone up. It's back up to 2.6 seconds. Got as low as 2.2 we saw. But again, these guys putting in basically identical lap times, Rexing and Van de Sant, would be fantastic if they were right next to each other on the racetrack, but separated right now by those 2.5 seconds, making it a little bit tricky for us to follow, and we're just waiting to see now in terms of, who starts to wear through those tires a little bit quicker. It is going to be fuel dependent in terms of these runs, but does somebody eventually come out with an advantage? On that last run, it was in fact Rexing, who was better on his tires in the long run. Is Van de Sant going to flip that this time around? But already we are, about 30 or so laps into this run, almost 40 laps into this run. And these guys still putting in very competitive lap times and very similar lap times to one another. That's the biggest chunk we've seen Van de Sande take off of Rexing in a little while. That was about a 1/10 of a second there. But Rexing, actually, and that was a 1/10 of a second in clean air for Rexing, and a little bit of lap traffic for Van de Sande.
Yeah, and as you talked about, when you're a guy like Nicholas Sudik right now, you're going, okay, there's only 3 of us on the lead lap, almost 6 seconds back. Without a yellow here, Rish, how do you gain that 6 seconds? Are you pitting earlier? Are you staying out a little bit later? Are you just trying to work that traffic as much as possible? Because if you're sitting third as the last car in the lead lap, Sudik, a guy who hasn't led laps today, you're more apt to maybe take some risks to get up there, but you pretty much have a top 3 podium locked in.
Yeah, it's a tough call if you're Sudik. I think that undercut is going to be the more powerful race strategy in terms of gaining time. Is it going to gain you 7 seconds? I don't quite know if it's going to do that much for you, but that's Nicholas Sudik's best bet right now, because I think in terms of pure pace, he's thereabouts, but not enough to close the gap. He's running the same lap times as those leaders, so it's going to just maintain the gap. And unfortunately for Sudik, that's not going to be enough. If he wants to try something aggressive, I'd go on strategy. And the worst case scenario is he goes down a lap to Joe Rexing and Alexander Van de Sande, which is realistically not the end of the world because he's about 3/4 of a lap ahead of Mark Murphy.
We had a spin. Brubaker spun off with no yellow a little bit ago. We have seen some spins with no yellow flags here, Rish. Not usually normal at Iowa, because if that car comes around, you're normally going to bring out a yellow and make some contact.
Yeah, for the most part you are. What I think we might be seeing more of is guys getting a little bit tight off the corner, hitting that outside wall, and then going down towards the infield here, either on this front straightaway or on that back straightaway where you've got some runoff area. And so if the cars are running slow down there, that's off the racing line, and iRacing feels it's not necessary to call the caution for that. So that's my guess as to what's happening. Is Michael Hossack, Jari Brubaker have both run into issues. They've been a little bit further back, as Hossack right now on pit road actually damage on that car, and that might be race over, in fact, for the 24 car as he's towing it back to pit road. So it was pretty significant damage for that one. We can actually check it out here on the Whiskey Cast replay, as there's not too much going on the racetrack right now. Let's take a look here. Michael Hossack in that 24, and there it is, just again, tight coming off of turn number 4 to that inside wall, and it's not going to bring out a caution as he stays off the racing line, and they don't really count that debris too much here on iRacing in terms of getting in the way.
Yeah, it looked like, I think it was maybe Frankenfield, if he's still out there, that he maybe come up a little bit and disrupt that air, got into some dirty air, and then lost it coming off of the turn. So 85 laps to go here from Iowa. Rish, wanted to give myself a little bit of a plug here. Burnout Sports, burnoutsports.com. I'll have an awesome stand-up interview tomorrow with the Indianapolis 500 champion in Marcus Ericsson. So be sure to follow me on Twitter at TonyDND and follow Burnout Sports as I get to talk to the champ about what the last 2 weeks have been like for him.
Yeah, that's going to be an exceptional episode to follow, and it's crazy. I remember I was actually traveling during the 500 and didn't have any time to sit down and watch it, but I remember seeing the news that Marcus Ericsson had gone out and won it and thinking, man, he's had one of the most interesting journeys, I think, within IndyCar. I think a lot of people still, even up to the day of the Indy 500 and maybe even a few after, I know he's joked about it, still credit him as a pay driver, right? He kind of got into Formula One, very much benefited off of the financial supporting he had. But I think one argument I always made for him was, he had won championships and he had done extremely well in junior formulas, certainly earned a spot in Formula One. And the fact that he's a very tall guy as well. He's a big guy. And in Formula One, you can't really be that. And actually drove most of the seasons he ran there without a drink system. So doing those, 1 hour, 45-minute races without having any kind of fluids going into your system is going to certainly slow you down. So definitely kind of hurt from that. Moves over to the U.S. And I think, again, a lot of people discounted him. Had a little bit of an on and off rookie year there for, Schmidt-Peterson Motorsports, what they were back then, but then moved to Ganassi. And I think he's really been a breakout there. Maybe not, of course, on the level of the, Alex Palou and Scott Dixon, but to go out and win the Indy 500, I think he's put himself now in the picture. And I think Chip Ganassi Racing has 3 bona fide stars within that squad, and that's fantastic for them.
Yeah, and just like these guys running tonight, you really get up for that Indianapolis 500 and you want to win that. And then when you do have success there, all of a sudden, oh, we got to start thinking, not that you weren't beforehand, because I always look at the first 3 or 4 races of any season, like let's go out and get wins. Now you're thinking, okay, we got to think a little bit more on the championship course. Yes, we want to be able to go out and get wins. We want to be able to go out and get victories where we can. But there's some nights we might have to take a third place to think about what we're going to do as far as winning this championship. So Jared Rexing continuing to lead here, up 14 spots from his starting position. In second is Alex Van de Samp. He is up 17 spots. The gap about 2 seconds here. So really just kind of riding around, biding their time. But you would think that sooner or later Van de Samp's going to pounce.
Yeah, we'll have to see. I don't know how hard Van de Samp is really pushing right now at this point in the race, if he's really going for it, because that gap is going up between Rexing and Van de Samp, now up to 2.9 seconds. And again, just super similar lap times between these guys. 17.85, 17.88, and right now, again, slight favor towards Jared Rexing, but this could swing really easily. The problem is that those swings aren't going to make a massive difference without, again, major lap traffic or even a caution to really bring these two drivers together, because they are so evenly matched out on the racetrack right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And getting down here now to where we may see, Rish, only one more pit stop, if not mistaken. So Van de Samp just biding his time here, riding around pretty much all by himself out there. So we'll see if he can keep it clean, which has been a story throughout this race. With 70 laps to go, Rich, let's recap a little bit. We had a yellow for a crash on lap 26, but then that second yellow really threw a wrench into this race here. About, I believe, if not mistaken, around lap 95 or so.
Yeah, it was just about that mark there, and yeah, crazy wreck there. It was who was that? It was Eric Macedo, I believe, and Eric Troiano came together.
Yep.
No, sorry, Troiano and Grijalva, it might have been.
3 wide going into 3.
Yeah, it was tight quarters racing. It looked like the 47 car came down on the 14 of Troiano. Troiano, though, I think also made a little bit of a late move. I don't actually recall what race control called that incident in terms of fault. We were so busy looking at replays the whole time. But yeah, I mean, took out our race leader, Adriana Pinheiro, in a huge hit. Chad Frankenfield kind of nabbed that back corner of his tire, and then he got back up and running a little bit, but then fell back again. Victor Del Porto was involved in that incident as well. Del Porto, though, since has now moved inside the top 10 as he continues to run with that wounded race car. But so many other drivers taken out on that one. Jari Brubaker was out there. James Kennedy, Thomas Geisler, Eric Troiano we mentioned, Craig Forsyth, Joseph Grijalva we mentioned, Marshall Stanley taken out in that one. So many drivers, and we were left really after that one with more or less 11 cars left on the racetrack. Now even less, as we have 9 cars running on the racetrack as it currently stands. So yeah, crazy night for sure. And that second caution was the one that really set it off and set us into this long green flag run. And it was the 47 car at fault, my bad. So Joseph Grijalva was deemed at fault for that big incident. But yeah, kind of kicked off this long green flag run. Guys have been good since then, but it's been very spread out. You saw that incident with Alexander Van de Samp, that spin, trying to get past a car going a lap down, Joe Ribeiro in the 07, spun it around. Van de Samp then lost that lead, now sits 2.5 seconds behind Jared Rexing. And that gap's been fluctuating from 3 seconds to 2.2 is kind of the gap we've seen, but no closer yet for Van de Samp. Again, we'll see. This was a big chunk he took off on this most recent lap. He could be starting to find that little bit of a pace advantage over Rexing. But then on that most recent lap, again, about a tenth of a second. We'll see. Could this be where it starts to shift in the favor of that 97?
Yeah, Sudik, we know, is currently in third as we have a pit stop here. Looks like Van de Samp is coming on to pit road here off of corner number 4 with 62 laps remaining. He should, Rich, be able to make this the rest of the way.
Yeah, for sure. And this is a good call here by Van de Sant. And if you're Rexing, you've got to respond to this basically immediately. That's the one thing you're watching out for if you are Jared Rexing. He actually stays out on the racetrack at least for one more lap. We'll see if he decides to pit this time by, but every lap that Jared Rexing doesn't pit is an advantage for Alexander Van de Sant. Of course, it could shift a little bit later, but I still think that advantage of about 1/10 of a second, you need to have maybe about 1.5 tenths of a second speed advantage over the guy in front of you to really make that pass comfortably. Right now, I don't think that's the gap between a few laps difference on tires. So Rexing maybe going a little bit longer here, trying to emphasize that gap, but Van de Sant is going to be back out on the racetrack pushing a little bit harder, and he could close that gap up to Jared Rexing here pretty quickly. 3 laps the difference now, maybe even up to 4 as Van de Sant goes down a couple more laps, but yeah.
Yeah, now I was a little shocked there too on why you wouldn't come in when you're battling a lap car, but he had no problem getting around that lap car. So we should see pit stops here from the top 2 over the next probably 7 to 10 laps as Van de Sant came in after that spin about 5 to 6 laps before everybody else. So some of the strategies starting to play out here, some of the moves continuing to be made, but it's that Nesquik number 10 of Jared Rexing out front as we complete lap 243. Just 57 more laps to go. One more pit stop for the leaders. But again, Rish, with only 3 drivers on the lead lap, I think you stay out on this stint as long as you possibly can to have the freshest tires, as long as you're not losing a huge gap here, which doesn't seem to be the issue. I'm going to stay out as long as I can to make this my longest stint and then have fresh tires for the remaining 45 to 40 laps, and then maybe even have fresher tires if we do see a restart for yellow.
Definitely, and I think the other advantage for staying out that I didn't kind of take into account earlier was it's going to be a shorter pit stop, as now Rexing does come down pit road, but you're taking on less fuel on that car, and so that could also save him some of that time. But here we go. The gap right now, 39 seconds between Jared Rexing and Alexander Van de Sant. A typical pit road time is about 40 seconds, so it's going to be super close between these guys out in the racetrack. And remember, Van de Sant's going to have about a lap and a half where he is running a little bit faster than Jared Rexing. Rexing slides it into a stop right on the money. Van de Sant brings himself back onto the lead lap, and now all of a sudden it is going to be a race between these two, and it's going to be very close out on the racetrack. Once Rexing comes out, there he is. He has to roll down so painfully slow there. He hits that cone, starts to accelerate, but Van de Sant already across the start-finish line. It's going to be super close between these two drivers.
And we'll see as he merges down the back straightaway. Van de Sant on the charge, already up to speed as Rexing gets up to speed as well. And as of right now, Rexing has a little bit of an advantage, but certainly since before both drivers went to the pits, Rish, this gap is a lot closer than what it was.
Absolutely, and now if you're Van de Sant as well, seeing that driver in front of you kind of propels you forward just a little bit. So for Rexing, this worked out really well, and he timed that perfectly. I think he waited as long as he needed to ensure that he was going to come out in front of Alexander Van de Sant after a clean pit stop. And so now he has fresher tires, he has track position, and it worked out very much in favor of Rexing. We'll see if he can extend this gap, which he seems to be doing right now. So certainly advantage Rexing to start this, but he still has to deal with lap traffic first, which could be a little bit of a problem. So there's that 07 car, once again, giving our leaders just a little bit of an issue as they do work their way past him. This time, again, a little bit cleaner. AJ Musselman as well in the middle there. But yeah, you've got to be careful if you're Jared Rexing, and already starting to separate himself ahead of the 97. So good attempt there by Alexander Van de Sant, but now he's got his work cut out for him as Rexing has both tires and track position.
Yeah, he's got that indeed. So they cycle through. The gap has been cut a little bit, but Van de Sant now again having some trouble with Ribeiro here, the lap car, getting around him. And if I can read this right, it looks like Nicholas Sudek is about 18 seconds behind. So is it possible that he will go a lap down here over the next couple of laps as well? That would only put the top 2 on the lead lap, Rish, which I'm telling you what, man, I think if we do these races 150 more times, this might be the only time we see the top 2 finishers on the lead lap.
Yeah, the last time I think we had anything close to this was Long Beach a few seasons back, where we had 3 finishers on the lead lap, just 5 cars running at the end. We are approaching that. Obviously, a few more cars than that running right now. But yeah, 2 cars actually on the lead lap, as there you see. That is Nicholas Sudik on your screens in that blue car. He has already gone 1 lap down from our leaders.
Indeed. So if you're Sudik, you're just going, all right, I've got pretty much a podium locked up. Maybe those two on the lead lap battle for each other, and something goes wrong, or they get caught up with the lead or with another lap car. But again, the class of the field here over the last 150 laps has been Van de Sande and Jared Rexing, as we are down to just 45 more laps to go here in the Iowa Corn 300 and the Mega Driver 86 Indy Racing League on the Elite Racing Network. And Iowa is always a fun race. It's a fast race, but I hate to say this, we might not be done with the yellow flags here tonight.
Yeah, we might not be, and yeah, I will mention one thing, Van de Sande, and it seems like it might not just be Van de Sande, but drivers in general upset with that 07 car of Joe Ribeiro, who is a lap down, not trying to prevent himself from going a lap down, already a lap down, fighting so fiercely from these leaders getting by, and that's actually cost Alexander Van de Sande 2 seconds as he now sits further behind Jared Rexing. He spent a long time trying to get by that 07, and there's certainly no love there for Joe Ribeiro there in the driver communication channel. So, yeah, 07 car, remember, that was the one that Van de Sande collided with, that spun him around, lost him that lead. Certainly goes both ways. With that time, Ribeiro was defending his lead lap, and Van de Sande wasn't successfully communicating. But this time around, there was no reason there for Ribeiro to be that aggressive in defending his position, as he was already 1 lap down.
Yeah, and very important here for Van de Sande to still remain patient. You still got 40 laps to try to make up this distance, try to edge this gap of about, if I'm seeing this right, 2.9 seconds or 2.1 seconds. But yeah, some of these lap cars have really put a dapper into some of these leaders having a chance to win.
Yeah, for sure. It's kind of opened that gap right back up to where it was, and Van de Sande seems to be having the worst end of the stick in terms of dealing with traffic. Jared Rexing being much more efficient in getting by these guys, and Van de Sande, every time he catches a lapped car, hurts him pretty significantly. So, yeah, again, if you're Rexing, you're kind of loving the look of this, and you can see he's catching a lapped car, but very easily able to kind of slot on by. It's kind of the opposite of what you'd normally expect here. Normally, you'd expect the leader to face a little bit more resistance as a guy doesn't want to go down another lap or go down their first lap, but this time by, it's Van de Sande who's facing that little bit more resistance on the racetrack. Potentially could be that communication error still from earlier in the race where he's just not communicating with the lap cars. But as it stands, Rexing, Van de Sande, the only 2 drivers on the lead lap, the only 2 drivers with a shot to win this one. Even if we do get a caution, they will be the only 2 to restart on the lead lap. But as it stands right now, it is certainly advantage Jared Rexing, fresher tires, and a 2.5 second gap to second place Van de Sande.
Yeah, and Van de Sande tried to end his day early, about 100 laps ago, spinning, but then luckily it was about 4 or 5 laps from when he was scheduled to pit anyway, so he keeps it going, keeps it moving forward, and finds himself as the second car on the lead lap as we hit lap number 265 with 35 to go. You know, if you're Rexing, you're hoping for clean and green the rest of the way. If you're Van de Sande currently running second, you're hoping that it will go a yellow here to kind of be able to make up that gap.
Yeah, you definitely are, and we'll see how this plays out now between these 2 drivers, up to 3 seconds now for Jared Rexing. Again, just running faster lap times, and there's that tire advantage. We talked about it, 5 laps or so tire advantage between Jared Rexing and Alexander Van de Sande. Actually, it's a little bit more than that. It's about 8 lap difference between those guys, and yeah, it's going to be advantage Rexing from here on out. The only shot I see with Van de Sande is issues for the 10 car or a caution coming out, and with how spread out this field is right now, it seems less than likely. It could be, though, another incident between lapped cars potentially on the racetrack.
Yeah, still got to certainly be careful here. You know, even though you're later in the going, and maybe some of these drivers don't have as much of a reason to stay a lap or 2 laps down, right? It's going to be hard to make that up over the final 30 laps. So we will see as we continue to watch Alex Van de Sant, who has led many laps here tonight, avoided disaster twice, once with that big accident early on, and then with the touching of a lap car, which spun him around. With 30 laps to go, he will look to make up that gap to take over the lead. But again, I think it's 3.34 seconds right now is the gap up to Jared Rexing, who currently has taken the lead of this race after Van de Sant had that issue, had that mistake spinning next to a lapped car, and Rexing was right there to pounce and finds himself now currently out front.
Yeah.
As we look back with some lap cars going back and forth 3 wide, don't let Jared Rexing know this is going on, because he wants this to stay as clean and green for the last 28 laps as possible.
Yeah, none of this here on the racetrack is for position, but a little bit of action on the track for sure. Joe Ribeiro looks at the 5 of Alec Balvans and the 54 of AJ Musselman. Musselman trying to get back on the same lap as Ribeiro, but he's a full lap down from the 07 car. Yeah, I think the other thing you could potentially be seeing from Van de Sant, as well as kind of that pace disadvantage, is just no desire maybe to run that flat out. He still has that huge points gap. All of his championship contenders have been involved in something much bigger than him. He runs his race, he does his thing, and I mean, basically, if he gets a top 10 finish, next week, he should be guaranteed that championship. So, a little bit less urgency, I think, on behalf of Van de Sant to grab that. Would I'm sure love to grab the win here, but maybe just being a little bit more patient, thinking about that big picture a little bit more.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you're there, I think you go for it, and you try to make, you try to make that gap, and you try to go for the win. But right now, you're almost content with 25 laps to go to say, you know what, we're going to finish this thing second, and really all I got to do is make sure that I'm parked in my spare bedroom or in my basement in front of my rig, in front of my iRacing set, fire that bad boy up, and I'm going to clinch the championship here for 2022.
Yeah, for sure. So playing that long, oh wow, big, I don't even know what that was. It was just a loose nature off of turn number 4 for Joe Rivera. He saves it though, keeps it pointed in the right direction with 24 laps to go as we tick over to that. Yeah, again, that's something that's going to get your heart racing if you're Jared Rexing. Ribeiro already not the most popular guy in the race tonight. If he were to bring out that caution, I'm sure he wouldn't be getting much love from Jared Rexing either. But right now, they all stay under green flag conditions, and Ribeiro keeps that car pointed in the right direction. Great save from that 07 car, though.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you're Jared Rexing, I don't know how much you're paying attention to what's going on through the rest of the field, or if you're just focused forward on trying to finish out these last 21 or 22 laps. So, man, yeah, it's interesting with 20 laps to go. And if you're Jared Rexing, you're just going, man, everybody just keep it clean, keep it green, and we'll be able to finish this thing out under green flag conditions is really what you're going for.
Yeah, for sure. An update on Chad Frankenfield in that 15 car has officially retired the car up into the 10th position and cannot lose that spot anymore. Everybody else behind him not running on the racetrack. So maximize the points that Frankenfield can earn today. Unfortunately, of course, it takes him out of the championship, but he can at least secure that 4th place in the championship, ahead of some of the other drivers behind him. Meanwhile, again, that main championship battle we talk about, Van de Sant should be gaining a huge chunk of points over Victor Del Porto, who is still running there in the 9th position. Of course, 11 laps down still from our leaders. Running competitive lap times, but unfortunately just doesn't have that same track position. But yeah, it's going to be a tall order for Del Porto next week, but it's certainly still going to be mathematically possible for that car to clinch the championship.
As we are under 20 laps to go here at the Iowa Corn 300 with Jared Rexing out front. Talk about, if you have it in front of you, Rich, you know off the top of your head, the wins that Rexing has had and how his overall performance has been so far this year.
Yeah, no wins this season for Jared Rexing in the Indycar series. I actually have to do a quick check on last season as well to see if he pulled one out, because I know he's been very competitive at the end of a couple of these ones. But we'll have to, again, just do a quick look here as I pull up those numbers. Jared Rexing, as far as I can tell, not a race winner in the IndyCar series. but has had a lot of success in our stock car racing series. Actually, excuse me, he is a winner of the in the IndyCar series. It was just a number of years back. It was actually back in 2020 in the B season then. And guess what racetrack he won at?
I'm going to go with Iowa.
You would be correct. Yeah, Jerry Rexing winning at Iowa 2 years ago. It was in the 2020 B season. Won it by half a second over Victor Del Porto. On that night, Alexander Van de Sande actually was crashed out on the very first lap of the race. So there's an update there as well. 26 cars started that race. It was Rexing over Del Porto over Henry Bennett, who's a past champion of the IndyCar series here as well. So Rexing familiar with the racetrack. Yeah, I mean, ran a fantastic race back then and is doing just that again this time by. Last time around, 8 cars were running at the end of it, so very similar attrition levels to what we see tonight. 9 cars running right now, so actually doing a little bit better than a few years back.
All right, sorry about that. I got booted there for a bit, but we are back with just 10 laps to go. Rish Rexing going for his second career win at the Iowa Speedway with 10 laps to go. Van de Sande currently second. Sudik is third. Mark Murphy fourth. Ribeiro has had a very interesting night, as you just mentioned. There's going to be some talks, I'm sure, after this race, but he finds himself fifth. Musselman is sixth. Macedo, who has had some very close moments, is seventh. Balvance eighth. Victor Del Porto ninth. And out of the race is Chad Frankenfield. He will still collect a top 10 here with just 9 laps to go from the Iowa Speedway. All Jared Rexing here over this last about 100 laps or so after Van de Sande was leading, got caught up with a lap car, spun that number 97 purple and white machine out, and that's going to cost him the victory, it looks like. But he will indeed have about a nice second place finish here. He's about a half lap back, however.
Yeah, and I mean, the racing's certainly not over. It might be over for that race win, at least for right now. But yeah, we've been green for 277 laps. It's been an impressive. Is that right? Or no, sorry, total green flag laps at 277 laps. There we go. But yeah, impressive run by these guys. They've been doing a good job at, again, keeping the racing green here. But we do still have one close battle out on the racetrack. It's Joe Ribeiro. Oh, it's a caution.
Yellow flag. Oh, my goodness. And Ribeiro, who, as we just mentioned, has not been very popular here lately of this race with some contact and some close driving. He spins out, makes contact. Yellow flag is out. He wrecks out of the 5th position. Let's go to the Whiskey Cask replay and check it out here with just 5 laps to go.
Oh, man, oh, man, oh, man. Yeah, we'll take a look at this. But the question is, do we get a green flag finisher with 6 to go? We might not. This could finish under yellow, and there's Ribeiro sending it there on the inside of Musselman, and you've got to think that one might go towards that 07 car. That seemed like a little bit of it. We'll take a look at that blimp view, get the overhead, but seemed like a late move, at least from my end, on the 54 car. Curious about your thoughts there, Tony.
Yeah, let's take a look at it if we can one more time. He's got the run here, and again, this is the second time we've seen this tonight. You're just way too far in the corner to try to make that move stick. And it's going to end up costing you. So, yeah, definitely fault of the 07 there as race control comes down. But yeah, that's just a very lofty move. Really for much of an apparent reason here with about 5 laps to go. And I'm not sure we'll be able to finish this thing as Rexing comes into the pits.
That's a risky call there by Jared Rexing. He makes that call to come down pit road. He thinks we're going to go back to green flag racing to end this race. Alexander Van de Sande, on the other hand, stays out. So this is going to be really interesting. It's going to be close. I don't think we're going to go back to green flag racing.
Well, we saw this a few years ago in the actual IndyCar race. There was about 5 drivers on the lead lap. 3 of them, including Robert Wickens, who had a podium finish wrapped up, came in to the pits thinking, hey, we're going to go back green for at least 2 laps. I want to have the fresher tires on there. And they never went back to green. So as we come around here, there'll be just 3 laps to go. This is very risky for Jared Rexing because unless he was about out of fuel, which I don't think is the case, he's going to have to make a move to win this thing if they do go back green. If they don't go back green, he just absolutely gave up his first victory of the season.
Absolutely, and so the lights are still on the pace car, which means we've got at least one more lap here under green after this one, which means, and so you just saw the comment from Race Control, we will not have the kind of self-regulated pace lap after the pace car comes in. This will be a one-lap shootout. Alexander Van de Sant with track position on, how old are these tires now? They're pretty old there. Yeah, 65 lap old tires versus Jared Rexing in second place on the fresh tires. One lap shootout here, 7/8 of a mile to decide this Iowa Corn 300. You cannot write this stuff.
So we could see a green and white Rish at the same time in a one lap shootout with some lap cars up there. I maybe I'll be proven wrong here, Rish, but I really don't like that move of Rexing to come down the pit road.
Yeah, and actually, I'm just getting a word here that there might be some confusion because Race Control has not officially said that it would go directly to green. I'm just going to get some quick yeah, there's no confirmation quite yet about actually what the procedure is. As we run another lap here, and the lights are still on in the pace car, I think this race is over.
Slowly but surely comes Alex Van de Sant, who I think, Rish, by far, of any race that we've called this year, he has had the luck go his way over 300 laps more than any driver in any race so far. Obviously, was running up to the field, has had a very fast car all day, gets up to third, two top runners crash out. He spins, gets it gathered up into the pits, and now basically inherits the lead after Rexing dives down to pit road. And if you're Jared Rexing, you've got to be absolutely beside yourself here as the white flag is out and the pace car is still out with just one lap to go. Van de Sant will be your winner, barring any ungodly, crazy circumstances here.
Yeah, and it will. Yeah, Rexing just assumed that we would go back to green flag racing. He thought we had enough laps. He pitted on his own decision. I don't think there was any miscommunication from Race Control. It was simply I hate to say it, a mistake there for Jared Rexing. Just miscalculated how many laps we'd have under caution here. And as we of course, the lights stay out on the pace car, we will finish this race here. It is the Whiskey Cast last call final lap, and you hate to end a race like this under caution, which could have turned out into a fantastic sprint to the end, but there it is. The race is going to go to Alexander Van de Sant and Jared Rexing. Yeah, that's going to be a disappointed driver when we speak to him after this one, as checkered flag is going to wave coming off of turn number 4. Alexander Van de Sant, in one of the craziest races, I'm sure, of his career as well, is going to come out and win this.
Unbelievable. If Van de Sant would have came in and got tires sitting second, I would have been on top of that, and that would have been a great move. But again, he just stays out there under yellow, probably thinking, we're going to come home second, and that sucks. We're not going to get a chance at it. But all of a sudden, under yellow, you take over the lead as Rexing pits, and Alex Van de Sant, who will wrap up the championship next week at Gateway, is your winner here tonight in the Iowa Corn 300 on the Mega Driver 86 IndyCar Series on the Elite Racing Network. Rish, all I can say is wow.
Yeah, that was basically my messages when we were just talking to Race Control in a text. There was, yeah, wow. What a way to end that race. They're all staying in position to ensure scoring because there is a little bit of a glitch with iRacing with guys finishing this race under yellow. So everybody will run this lap again. And question there as well, as Jared Rexing didn't decide to finish that lap. You can assume, of course, a furious Jared Rexing with that result. And I don't even see him in the Discord. We might not get a chance to speak with that 10 car as Van de Sant is now confirmed as our race winner. It wouldn't shock me if we don't end up hearing from that 10 car because I'm sure he is furious with the way that race ended. In terms of whether it was, again, that self-mistake, whether that was a miscommunication from Race Control and Race Control wasn't clear to him. It's unclear to us, but as far as we can tell, it was simply a miscalculation on the part of the 10 car.
As Van de Sant burns him down here as the winner. The only thing that I've ever seen that was anything like this was when Mark Martin in a Busch race back in the 90s pitted thinking the race was over. But again, here you're pitting thinking, well, we'll go back to green. I'll have the fresher tires. But you absolutely took yourself out of the win because you definitely would have had it. And the only way that he wouldn't win is if he came in, because I think even if they went back to green, he would have had enough of a gap there over 2 laps with some lap cars between there to take the win. So it is Alex Van de Sant picking up the victory here tonight. And I can't wait to talk to him to say, hey, how about kind of walking into the back of that one? So whenever we have Alex Van de Sant, please let us know. But man, what a finish to this one here at the Iowa Speedway in the Iowa Corn 300.
Absolutely, and speaking of him, we'll bring in our race winner, and in one of certainly the strangest ends to a race we've seen tonight, and certainly one of the strangest races I think as a whole. Alexander Van de Sant, race winner here at the Iowa Corn 300. Up until the last 5 or so laps, it didn't look like that. Just talk us through the race, obviously avoiding that massive wreck that took out some of your title rivals, and then the battle you had with Rexing and that final caution.
Yeah, I mean, that was a tough race, very long. First of all, sorry to Jared, that's extremely unfortunate. I would have done the opposite of him. If he had stayed out, I would have pit, and then it wouldn't have mattered. Or if it had gone green, I would have had fresh tires and been right behind him. But yeah, that's just a really tough situation there. And yeah, the wrecks and some of the conduct of the lap cars, frankly, was unacceptable. So yeah, you probably saw my incident there.
Mhm.
But yeah, so just frustrating. I mean, glad to hang in there, but yeah, just. Yeah, the most Mickey Mouse win I've ever had. Although I think it happened in real life here too. So
Yeah.
yeah.
You talk about, I mean, you were good. You were good from the get-go. You were moving up throughout the field. You were gaining spots. And really, I think those first 150, 200 laps is about finding a rhythm, staying patient. Some luck, as mentioned, that you come up on a lap car, you spin out, but you're within about 5 laps from when you're going to originally pit anyway. So you'll take the luck as well as how good you were today. But just talk about how difficult it is at Iowa Speedway because you don't have any time on a 17-second lap to kind of take a breath. You've got lap cars all around you. How important was it to stay patient throughout this and then pretty much inherit the win there?
Yeah, no, it was extremely patient. Yeah, like you said, I just had to take my time, move up through the field, and take the positions where I could, and yeah, just and as you get towards the end, it gets more urgent. You want to build that gap, and because especially as you're coming up to the pit stops, but yeah, there's just no break or rest to just cool off a bit, especially when you get those long runs. And really, those long runs are like fantastic here when you have lots of traffic coming through. Like it is so much fun when everybody plays nice. But it happens.
Were you pumping your fist more when that yellow came out, knowing okay, I've got a chance now, or obviously pumping your fist more when Rexing pulls it into the pits?
I mean, I wish the caution had come a couple laps earlier, then we would have had a real race. But the caution would have been my only shot. I burned up my tires trying to catch Jared, and then couldn't get around Victor there. He was had just enough pace to stay in front. So yeah, just I needed a caution, and I got extremely just stupid lucky. So.
Well, sometimes you got to have a lot of luck in these things. Congratulations on the win. Championship should be wrapped up next Friday night from Gateway. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, and we'll talk to you next week for the final race of the season.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Alexander Van de Sant there, the winner of the Iowa Corn 300, and a bizarre twist of events there over that last yellow flag. And Rish, we talked about some of the lap guys getting in the way. We talked about, Alex just talked about as well some of the way that the lap cars were racing. But sometimes you got to be more lucky than good. He was both lucky and good this evening. And we might have lost Rish there as well. So,
my bad.
Quick look. Oh, nope, you're good.
Back there with you. I was just gonna say no. He was great tonight. Obviously, that mistake certainly cost him, and that ultimately I think would have cost him the win had things finished under green. But I mean, you can't fault him for what he did. He made the right call there when the caution flag came out, and that was the deciding factor. So Van de Sant did everything he needed to do, and unfortunately, we did get confirmation that we won't be speaking to our second place Jared Rexing. So whenever you're ready, we'll bring in our third place finisher, then Nicholas Sudik.
Yeah, Nicholas Sudik, we're ready for him. A nice podium. A really difficult race tonight, Nick. You can talk about it. You were probably the most consistent driver, finishing third after starting fifth. How difficult was it out there on those green flag runs, especially maneuvering through some of the lap traffic?
Oh my God. Thanks first off. I appreciate the compliments there. It was very difficult. I was probably one of the few drivers running the low line most of the time. I saw a lot of people kind of drifting up high line. It's mentioned about traffic. It actually got caught out hitting a little bit of dirty air from some traffic that I caught early on. I think I actually took a very, very tiny bit of damage. But like my front end just did not feel the same mid corner off after I tapped, but I got away with like very minimal damage. But yeah, no, it felt great. Like I'm ecstatic. This first podium here. I've had a rough season, but momentum going into the final bit here.
Yeah, that's awesome to see there for you. Just talk us through, I guess, that race, kind of in a strange position for yourself. A lap ahead of fourth position, a lap behind second position, maybe a little bit of a lonely race towards the end there, but doing everything you needed to do and holding a reasonable pace there with the leaders. Talk us through what your mentality was throughout that race. Did you try to take some risks early on to try and gain some track position up 2 spots from your starting spot? Or was it mostly kind of take what was given to you and benefit from, I think, obviously that big crash off that second caution?
I definitely benefited there. Got a little lucky. I feel gutted for the leaders that got caught up in that. Obviously, that they never want to see that. It was it was very fortunate that happened. For me, obviously, but I never want to see make up positions like that. But having to go through that early stage of the race, I knew the track was going to cool down a lot. Obviously, as soon as the sun set. So it was going to be even more difficult to pass. So I did get a little aggressive. And like I said, I kind of overheated my tires a little bit going into the early to middle part of the stint. So I did suffer. When Jared got up to me, I just said, just let him go. Cause I had no fronts left at all. But yeah, after that, I was just like, okay, let's hold pace. I took that little bit of damage. I was like, all right, I'm fine cornering. Downforce feels okay overall. Maybe just like missing like half a tenth to tenth a lap. But yeah, as soon as I got into a rhythm, I just kind of held my own, and then about middle through that second to last stint, I felt great, and I noticed that I was on that lap of my own. So I figured, hey, stay pat. Maybe it'll lucky wave around. Maybe I can make something happen.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it was just a lot of just keeping the nose clean, almost like a road course race early on, just keeping it clean, keeping it smooth. And ironically, saying that road course race, I ran in map 6 most of the time. So go figure.
Well, we appreciate you joining us here. Congratulations on your best run of the season, and good luck next Friday in the final race of the year from Gateway.
Thank you guys so much.
All right, Rish, your final thoughts on what was a crazy, wild Iowa race. Some bad luck for a lot of the guys up front. And then, obviously, Van de Sant snagging the win there in the closing seconds of the Iowa Corn 300.
Yeah, obviously the very first thing is you feel for Jared Rexing, right? He kind of didn't put a toe wrong, and while we talked about Van de Sant working his way up from 17th position on the grid, Jared Rexing worked his way up from 15th. So both of them had fantastic runs, worked their way up the order. You could certainly argue towards the end of that Jared Rexing on the green flag was the better driver, and I think he was. Van de Sant, of course, got that caution and played that correctly. And again, let's not discount what he's done this season. We talked about it earlier in the show when he was leading initially, but he's won on every type of racetrack that we visit here in the Mega Driver IndyCar series. Road course, street course, short oval, intermediate oval. Technically, the only thing he hasn't won on is a massive super speedway, but I think technically you call a 1.5 mile for an IndyCar is the super speedway package, so we'll give him that. I mean, incredible season from Van de Sant. Very good race from him tonight. That one mistake, and you could also argue that it was equally on the 07 car, who I think will continue to be aggressive with lapping cars throughout the night. So, yeah, it's going to be an interesting to see how the points play out when we get into it next week. Because we ended under caution, I think points aren't officially up yet. Actually, they are. And so Van de Sant heads into next week with a 70-point lead over over Victor Del Porto, 75 points over Adriano Pinheiro. Jared Rexing slides into 4th position in the championship ahead of Chad Frankenfield after that second place finish here. But yeah, Van de Sant's not going to need a ton to ensure that he wins that championship next week, but double points still leaves it mathematically open for those two chasing him. So we still got something to watch out for there at Worldwide Technology Raceway in 1 week's time.
Next week, Friday night, Worldwide Technology Raceway Gateway for the final race of the season for everybody, including Dave and Rish. Thanks to Chad as well for putting this together, and all the drivers in tonight's Mega Driver 86 IndyCar Series, Round 9 of the Elite Racing League. The Iowa Corn 300 goes to Alex Van de Sant. We'll talk to you next Friday night.